10. Drama? Their laziest yet, which perfectly describes this era for me. I don't know how they managed to put together something even less organized than my world, but it's always nice to know the bar can go further below hell and melt into a puddle. There's just a perfect irony here how an album named Drama has an album cover that features none of it. Which is bizarre because the album cover could have literally been any of the concept photos, the lack of location, the focus on the ugly and boring logo, and the bright crimson red for an album that features songs that are poppy and bright for the most part leaves Drama's album cover feeling nonsensical for me. 9. My World. So like I said, it's always nice to know that the bar can melt into a puddle into hell when it comes to SM. I guess My World has Drama to thank to get out of the number 10 spot. My World's typography is at least more creative than Drama's and took a chance, so the focus on it isn't unjustifiable. However, just like I pointed out in my World review, the typography is extremely unreadable and one of their worst in terms of logos. I hated seeing it so much while streaming that I swapped out the cover not too long after. Another very obvious case of laziness. This cover is just the screen grab from the initial teaser released for My World. Companies are so horny to have a little screen animation on Apple Music, that nobody wants to actually design an album cover anymore. It's so unserious. Even then, as it features at the very least the setting of the overall album which matches the music and sums up the era a bit nicely, it would be rather dumb to put it below Drama. But it can't go above anything else honestly. 8. Black Mamba. Black Mamba is this low because it has nothing going on rather than it being an actual bad album cover. aespa easily has one of the best logos of their generation and practically thrusted Chrome logos as well as logo animation into mainstream for their generation as well. It's simple but it does what it needs to do. I'm sure many of us would have come up with something more creative, but being that this was one of the only aspects from this debut that wasn't blatantly plagiarized, we have to applaud it for doing something right. 7. Girls. Honestly, if this didn't at the very least require some sort of designing to assemble together, I would have put Black Mamba above it. Girls cover bores me just as the bottom two does and shows an overall decline when it comes to aespa's art direction. The girls being extremely tiny on a blank black background is such a poor use of space. Not to mention, their tools look very oddly out of place compared to them because they are so small in comparison. I honestly don't see the point in them having the tools in this cover either because you can't appreciate the details with the size. The text to the bottom was equally tacky, summing up the Comebacks theme in an extremely cheesy way that's only really shown through the music with 2 songs. The only thing this cover does right for me is the holographic sticker, a neat little detail that adds some flair to it. But even then, I don't like either of the girls' logos displayed here. 6. Life's Too Short. Honestly, adorable. I really love the logo displayed here rather than the Y2K Metal Heart one that was displayed in the lyric video. This one is cutesy, girly and unique, reminding me of the late 2000s but still managing to feel fresh. I also love how this cover utilizes pastel colors, 3D objects and puffy clouds, not to mention a great selection of photos for the girls. I really love this cover, even if I hated the song. I honestly think this cover is better than the actual music video as well. 5. Finally, we're at the covers worth my time to talk about. This might shock many, but I'm putting Better Things at number 5. I don't know. Better Things just give me a lot of conflicted feelings, the biggest one being that this has no business being an aespa cover. I sort of dislike the way aespa's team just throws all dignity to the wind when it comes to appealing to a Western audience. aespa is all about anti-design, acid graphics, Chrome. I feel like this cover is the complete opposite of that, which makes sense because the song is as well. This album cover just feels like it could have been any artist. It doesn't have any features of aespa's work that makes me think of them when I see it. The artist who did this also did Magdalena Bay's Mercurial World cover, so comparing the two makes me dislike Better Things even more. I just didn't have the heart to place it out of the top 5 because it's one of the very few occasions which SM allows a creative outside their immediate space to step in and do some neat work for them, which also could have had something to do with Warner's involvement providing a possible bigger budget. 4. Forever. Forever is here simply because something had to be number 4. It's not a bad cover, it's pretty. It does what it needs to do. Unfortunately, NFTs sort of ruined my love for 3D work in this style as it was exploited a lot by that community. It's really nice, but the culture has shifted my appreciation to a more cynical one that leaves me feeling like this leans generic, even though it really isn't. It makes me sad thinking about how Crypto Brothers and AI have ruined a lot of things that were once really delicate and special to me. Moving on though. 3. Dreams Come True. What a beautiful cover. I always feel comforted when I see the color purple featured in aespa's work, as it perfectly encapsulates the feel of the group, no matter the shade. I honestly wish they would feature it more, much like Red Velvet does with red and pink. The adorable wings located to the back of the girls were done by the multi-talented Ning Ning, but its purpose is much more important than being a pretty asset. Dreams Come True is a remix to the original song by SES in 1998. The fairy wings are a reference to SES's album cover as well as the location. In SES's album, the girls are located in a forest, and many have used the music video for the song as a starting point to Quenya. I have my own opinions on that. Regardless, aespa makes use of this setting, but in their own way. The forest now turns into this beautiful, almost icy iridescent location in a Quenya that's more space than nature. The way the girls are adorably perched on a large rock reminds me a lot of the way they were introduced to us in their first concept photos. What drags this cover from what would have been a rightfully deserved #1 spot is two things. For starters, the type to the top couldn't have been a more awful decision. Personally, it's not my style, and I think if they were going to utilize any font, it should have been the exact one they used for SMCU Express, which is the album this song was featured on. If I would have had my way, it would have had a chrome logo that arched behind the girls in the background rather than awkwardly floating at the top in an already busy area. Either that or something way more discreetly to the side or vertical of the photo would have done this way more justice. My last gripe is the very tacky combo boots on their feet. This has always been a pet peeve of mine when it comes to girl groups. They'll have this extremely pretty dress on that's all puffy and feminine, then your eyes glance down and it looks like they have to enlist in the army by 7 p.m. today. I don't like it. It looks very nonsensical. Especially because it's always the same tacky, laced up boots. If these boots didn't have laces and were just chunky heeled, then I would excuse it, but the laces give it this very kitty 2010 laced up Converse feel that breaks my immersion from the fairy fantasy. For that, Dreams Come True lands at 3rd place. 2. Next Level. She could have and should have been #1, but so much went wrong with this cover, it's insane. I for the life of me cannot understand why, after Coco and Brian did all that work to create something so magical, so gentle, so enriched in details, would SM's creative team zoom in by 10x in the photo, cutting out practically everything so we can see the girls up close. Unlike Girls, this was one of the times in which the girls being smaller actually did more justice to the overall photo. You got to really see all the beautiful details of the home base as well as the beauty of the styling, which I have yet to see any group ever come close to this day. Brian based the visual work on his love for Final Fantasy, and seeing him break it down honestly made the final album cover all the more painful to look at. The original group teaser was perfect the way it was and didn't need any additional work to it. They should have just slapped that bad boy on the digital covers and called it a day. The zoom robs any of the impact you get from seeing the overall composition, especially in contrast to the constant beat switching of the song. But funnily enough, the other critical blow to this cover for me is also attributed to Brian. If I recall correctly, Next Level's logo was also done by him, and in response to that, I have to respectfully tell him to keep his day job, cause phew. I would have rather one of Wuchel Joe's stolen Pinterest concoctions of a logo rather than this very generic Halo Infinite ass one that's slapped right on top of this shit. Something about it just gives me very 2010 font free cyber font. Like, I just don't vibe with it at all. We needed something crazy and in chrome, much like Savages. If these two things were changed, this honest to God would be their best album cover of all time. Truly S tier. 1. Savage? Did they definitely only get this logo idea from Pinterest? Of course. Does this feature none of their faces? Sadly. Is it kinda boring to stare at while streaming? Definitely. But wow, did we not know what we had until it was gone. Savage perfected a formula that the team would miserably not even attempt to ever come close to in the following years for any of their projects, in a way that would be laughable if it wasn't so depressing to witness in live action. The emotion this cover invokes simply by the monochromatic color palette of blue already launched her to the top 5 casually. There's this very cold, dystopian feel that the hue brings that fits snugly with the hyperpop-inspired tracks that thrust you into an odd timeline where a snake is wreaking havoc on a thing called Quenya and the girls are hallucinating and there's something called the flat. It's hard not to feel completely immersed into the goofy universe aespa had built thus far when re-experiencing Savage, and the album cover plays a huge role in that post-interpretation as well. I enjoy this visual clash between the wireframe, the black mamba and the chains, creating this very maximalist image that overpowers your eyes in a really good way. The maximalist intent of course does not stop there, with the iconic Savage logo sitting menacingly at the top in all its symmetrical, thorny glory. The album cover perfectly sums up not only the album and era but aespa's entire artist identity in a way that makes it sad to see how promising they begin versus how lost the group seems to be these days. I could go on, but then this would randomly turn into a creative direction breakdown, which ain't what this video is. But that's it. This is my final ranking. Is yours close? Let me know if there's a cover I hate that you love or vice versa, cause I like seeing differing opinions on these ranking videos. It's always cool to see how differently someone interprets